Resources. Stuff to check out on the way to the future. There is an enormous amount of literature about anarchism. I have, as I've emphasized, drawn on a lot of it freely. I want here to list contemporary sources that have contributed significantly to the development of this book, since not all are acknowledged in the notes. I always want to call attention to some texts, literary and cinematic, with which anyone interested in anarchism might want to get acquainted. The fact that I've included something here doesn't mean that I share its perspective, of course, but just that I think it's interesting and worth exploring. Anarchism in America, directed by Stephen Fischler and Joel Sucher, featuring Murray Bookchin, Paul Avrich, Jello Biafra, Molly Steimer, Mildred Loomis, Carl Hess, et al. An evocative documentary that provides an overview of American anarchist thinkers and activists representing multiple schools and backgrounds from the 20th century to the present. An Anarchist FAQ by Ian McKay, et al. An influential exposition of anarchism featuring contributions from anarchists with a range of viewpoints, discussions of arguments for and against anarchism, and analyses of multiple schools of anarchist thought. Antiwar.com, Randolph Bourne Institute, a leading source of news and commentary designed to challenge militarism, imperialism, and the national security state, operated by a nonprofit named for the social critic who famously said, "War is the health of the state." It's cross-ideological in orientation, but a number of the people associated with it are anarchists, not surprisingly since opposition to the statist violence of war is a bedrock anarchist commitment. Paul Avrich, Anarchist Voices, an oral history of anarchism in America. Invaluable resources to the anarchist tradition in the United States. Mikhail Alexandrovich Bakunin, God and the State, Statism and Anarchy, edited by Marshall Schatz. Anarchist writings of a passionate Russian sparring partner of Karl Marx, who saw religion and statism as equally illusory and believed that Marx's ideas could be used to justify dictatorship. Randy E. Barnett, The Structure of Liberty, Justice, and the Rule of Law. Barnett's outstanding book offers a distinctive natural law grounding for a stateless society's legal order and explains how such an order might work. Alexander Berkman, What is Anarchism? A simple, clear exposition of what the author labeled communist anarchism by a lifelong friend and sometimes lover of Emma Goldman. Murray Bookchin, Post-Scarcity Anarchism, 3rd edition. A classic array of essays by America's leading post-World War II social anarchist thinker. Brian Kaplan, Anarchist Theory FAQ, or Instead of an FAQ, by a man too busy to write one, version 5.2. A readable and wide-ranging overview of issues related to anarchism by an academic economist who also writes about philosophy and politics. Kevin A. Carson, The Distorting Effects of Transportation Subsidies. The Freeman, Ideas on Liberty, 60.9. Healthcare and Radical Monopoly. The Freeman, Ideas on Liberty, 60.2. The Homebrew Industrial Revolution, a Low-Overhead Manifesto. Organization Theory, a Libertarian Perspective. Studies in a Mutualist Political Economy. Carson is a brilliant and creative synthesis and reinterpreter of anarchist tradition, drawing on both 19th century classics like the work of Proudhon and Tucker, and more recent work in history, economics, and political theory. Review Mutualist resources at his website, mutualist.org, and engage with him online at his blog, mutualist.blogspot.com. Center for a Stateless Society, Molinari Institute. articles, commentary, and other resources critiquing the state and its corporate allies, and envisioning stateless alternatives. I am a member of the Center's advisory board. Noam Chomsky. Chomsky on Anarchism. Not only a premier theoretical linguist and a longtime articulate critic of the U.S. government's foreign policy, Chomsky is also among the leading social anarchist thinkers writing today. Stephen R. L. Clark. Civil Peace and Sacred Order. Slaves and Citizens, and Anarchists Against the Revolution in The Political Animal, Biology, Ethics, and Politics. Clark presents an attractive version of anarchism for consideration and highlights commonalities between seemingly divergent anarchist schools. Even though, as will be apparent, I live politically on the left, his anarcho-conservatism has proved of ongoing value to my own thinking. David De Leon, The American as Anarchist. Reflections on Indigenous Radicalism. An historical analysis of anarchism as reflective of a persistent anti-authoritarian strand in American thought. Voltairine de Cleyre. The Voltairine de Cleyre Reader. Edited by A.J. Brigatti. A leading American anarchist at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, de Cleyre coined the phrase anarchism without adjectives. Jacques Ellul. Anarchy and Christianity, translated by Jeffrey W. Bromley. The distinguished and prolific social theorist argues that nonviolent anarchism is an appropriate expression of Christian faith. David D. Friedman. The Machinery of Freedom, Guide to a Radical Capitalism. A clear, good-natured, creative exposition of the case for a market-oriented variety of anarchism from an economic perspective. Emma Goldman. Anarchism and Other Essays. Living My Life. Anarchist and feminist who bridged the anarchist movements in the United States and Europe, Goldman famously declared, "I want freedom, the right to self-expression, everyone's right to beautiful, radiant things." David Goodway, editor, For Anarchism, History, Theory, and Practice. A collection of essays examining the early stages of 20th century anarchism and offering varied perspectives on anarchist theory. David Graeber. Fragments of an Anarchist Anthropology. A compact program for the development of a full-blown anarchist social theory, laying the groundwork for discussions of the state, voluntary associations, and resistance by a scholar described by a distinguished peer as the best anthropological theorist of his generation from anywhere in the world. Robert Graham, editor, Anarchism, A Documentary History of Libertarian Ideas, 1, From Anarchy to Anarchism, Year 300 Common Era, to 1939. Anarchism, A Documentary History of Libertarian Ideas 2, The Emergence of the New Anarchism, 1939 to 1977, and Anarchism, A Documentary History of Libertarian Ideas 3, The New Anarchism, 1974 to 2008. A vast collection of anarchist source materials from before the Middle Ages to the present. The selections are drawn from multiple intellectual and cultural traditions, many non-Western. Daniel Guérin. Anarchism, From Theory to Practice, translated by Mary Klopper. An influential overview of anarchist history and theory, which also features historical information about 20th century anarchist experiments. Karl Hess. Dear America. A Goldwater speechwriter turned new leftist explains his conviction that anarchism best expresses American ideals. Robert Higgs. Crisis and Leviathan. Critical episodes in the growth of American government. An anarchist economic historian carefully analyzes the link between economic, political, and military crises and the cancerous development of the American state. Tom Holterman and Hank van Maarseveen, editors of Law and Anarchism. Essays on the legal problems of a stateless society from diverse perspectives. Anthony de Jesse, Social Contract, Free Ride, a study of the public goods problem. An economist and philosopher argues on rational choice grounds that social order is possible without the state, but that the emergence of the state is a persistent danger. Charles W. Johnson, Rad Geeks People's Daily, official state media for a secessionist republic of one. Scratching by How Government Creates Poverty as We Know It. The Freeman, Ideas on Liberty, 57.10. Analytical, passionate, relentless. Johnson offers a mix of philosophical argument, political commentary, and in-your-face truth-telling, especially strong on the diverse connections between opposition to the state and challenges to various kinds of culturally embedded non-state subordination, both violent and nonviolent. Karl Hess, Toward Liberty, directed by Roland Halle and Peter W. Ledoux. An Oscar-winning portrait of the gentle, decent anarchist thinker and activist and advocate of local empowerment. Bill Kaufman, Bye Bye Miss American Empire, Neighborhood Patriots, Backcountry Rebels, and their underdog crusades to redraw America's political map. A literate, contrarian proponent of front porch anarchism, pens a love poem to decent secessionist movements, past and present. Stephen N. Kinsella, Against Intellectual Property. An anarchist lawyer and legal theorist offers a sustained case that patents, copyrights, and other forms of IP are unjust creations of the state. Gabriel Kolko, The Triumph of Conservatism, a reinterpretation of American history, 1900 to 1916. Though not an anarchist himself, Kolko provides lots of ammunition for anarchist critiques of the state in this study of how progressive-era regulations were shaped to serve the interests of big business. Peter Kropotkin, The Conquest of Bread. Mutual Aid. Biologist, geographer, and social theorist, Kropotkin articulated a vision of anarchy emphasizing cooperation and rootedness in the natural world. Peter T. Leeson, The Invisible Hook, The Hidden Economics of Pirates. An entertaining examination of some complex issues related to social interaction through the lens provided by 18th century pirates, who offer perhaps surprising evidence of the possibility of cooperation without the state. Roderick T. Long, Austro-Athenian Empire. Here and at his website, praxeology.net, Long serves up a tasty mix of very fine philosophy, politics, and whimsical pop culture musings. The thoroughly readable philosophical work includes discussions of anarchism, class analysis, economic method, feminism, and ethics. Roderick T. Long and Tibor Machin. Anarchism/Minarchism. Is a government part of a free country? Up-to-date arguments from people who believe there should be no state and people who believe there should be very limited states. James J. Martin. Men Against the State. The Expositors of Individualist Anarchism in America, 1827 to 1908. An engaging portrayal of many of the leading U.S. anarchists of the 19th century viewed in relation to contemporaneous radical movements. Albert Metzer, Anarchism, Arguments for and Against. A brief primer on anarchist ideas designed to respond to Marxist critiques, dismisses anarchist thinkers such as Tolstoy, Tucker, and Proudhon. Robert P. Murphy, Chaos Theory, 2 essays on market anarchy. a helpful discussion of the management of the potentially violent in a stateless society. Murphy blogs at consultingbyrpm.com/blog. Robert Nozick, Anarchy, State, and Utopia, features an unpersuasive but influential argument that a state could emerge legitimately in a stateless society. Pierre J. Proudhon, General Idea of the Revolution in the 19th Century, translated by John Beverly Robinson. System of Economical Contradictions, or The Philosophy of Misery, translated by Benjamin R. Tucker. What is Property? Edited and translated by Robert R. Kelly and Bonnie G. Smith. Arguably the first person to use the word anarchist for himself, Proudhon jousted with Marx and developed a distinctive approach to anarchism he labeled mutualism. Sheldon Richman, Libertarian Left, Free Market Anti-Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, in The American Conservative 10.3, provides an overview of a developing intellectual and political movement on the political left, populated largely by anarchists, that interestingly bridges some traditional ideological and strategic divides. Rudolf Rocker, Anarcho-Syndicalism, Theory and Practice, Pioneers of American Freedom, Origins of Liberal and Radical Thought in America, translated by Arthur E. Biggs. Anarcho-Syndicalism is a classic of anarchist strategy, theory, and history, which emphasizes the commitment to freedom shared by proponents of different anarchist tendencies. Pioneers is an appreciation of indigenous American radical traditions from the perspective of a titan of European anarchism. Murray N. Rothbard, Confiscation and the Homestead Principle, Libertarian Forum 1.6. The Ethics of Liberty, 2nd edition. Confiscation and the Homestead Principle elaborates a provocative model of wealth redistribution without the state. The Ethics of Liberty is a detailed exposition of the normative basis of Rothbard's preferred variant of anarchism. Mary Ruwart, Healing Our World in an Age of Aggression, a lively and insightful discussion of institutional and personal methods for problem-solving apart from state action. Crispin Sartwell, Against the State, An Introduction to Anarchist Political Theory, demonstrates the inadequacy of traditional arguments for state authority. James C. Scott, The Art of Not Being Governed, An Anarchist History of Upland Southeast Asia, a study of anarchy in action in a region that includes territories claimed by 7 different countries in Southeast Asia, an insightful, contemporary, and historical case study. Butler Schaefer, In Restraint of Trade, The Business Campaign Against Competition, 1918 to 1938. An anarchist legal theorist explains how big business used the regulatory state to its advantage at a crucial period in American history. A. J. Scoble, Deleting the State, An Argument About Government, expertly dissects arguments for the necessity and legitimacy of the state. Lysander Spooner, No Treason, The Constitution of No Authority, and A Letter to Thomas F. Bernard. Spooner joins Benjamin Tucker as one of the 2 19th-century American individualist anarchists who have exerted the most continuing influence on later anarchist thought. Spooner was a passionate opponent of slavery, as well as the monopolistic state, and an unsuccessful provider of the same services as the U.S. Postal Service, who was effectively put out of work by act of Congress. Many of Spooner's writings are available in electronic form at lysanderspooner.org. Edward P. Stringham, Editor, Anarchy and the Law, The Political Economy of Choice. Anarchy, State, and the Public Choice. Anarchy in the Law is an enormous collection of historical and contemporary essays concerned with the moral and practical problems raised by anarchism. Anarchy, State, and the Public Choice focuses on economic arguments for and against the viability of anarchism. Morris Tannehill and Linda Tannehill, The Market for Liberty, 3rd edition. A detailed explanation of how the authors believe social cooperation could be managed without the state. They sometimes say fairly silly things, but they also sometimes exhibit a humane, hippie-ishness sensibility that I confess I find charming. Michael Taylor, Community, Anarchy, and Liberty. The Possibility of Cooperation. Game theoretic modeling is carefully applied to problems related to the justification and operation of a non-coercive society. Leo Tolstoy, Government is Violence. Essays on Anarchism and Pacifism. Reflections on Violence and the State, by a passionate opponent of both. Benjamin Tucker, Instead of a Book, by a man too busy to write one. A collection of lively polemic essays by the dean of the 19th century American individualist anarchists. Includes the still widely discussed problematic statement, State Socialism and Anarchism. Colin Ward, Anarchism, A Very Short Introduction. Anarchist in Action. Anarchist History, Theory, and Practice from the perspective of the doyen of post-World War II English anarchism, good-natured, humane, and always thoroughly practical. Colin Ward and David Goodway, Talking Anarchy. An extended conversation between anarchist icon Ward and historian Goodway that focuses on a broad range of anarchist activists, ideas, and prospects. Sean P. Wilbur, The Libertarian Labyrinth, Mutualist Anarchism and Its Context, Two-Gun Mutualism and the Golden Rule. Wilbur offers insightful, literate anarchist social theory and commentary, in addition to a broad range of historical texts, the obscure as well as the relatively well-known by American and European anarchists, the latter sometimes available in translation for the first time.